Folks, thank you very much. I'm delighted to have a chance to be here in Oregon to spend some time with all of you. And I certainly want to thank Ames and Dama for this wonderful. This has been a great picnic, hasn't it? I think it's a great picnic. I know many of you come year after year. But this is Roxane's and my first time out here in Oregon, here at this location, and we're just delighted to have a chance to be here and spend some time with you. Now, Ames recognized Roxane. Roxane, where are you? Over here. Roxane is, and I just celebrated our 37th anniversary. I had a chance to meet many of you in the food line over here. You remember this. I have learned that the best way to see people is when they're lined up for chow. It's also the most dangerous way to see people because they might run right over you. But I want you to know that I have appreciated very much this warm Northwest greeting that I've received from all of you today, and I'm delighted to be here. As Ames said, I was the elected chief prosecutor of my home county in Henrico. I was elected there. We elect our prosecutors in Virginia. I served there for 6 years and then became the attorney general and then the governor of Virginia and then served 1 year as chairman of the Republican National Committee. So what that means is that I am a politician, a lawyer, and a party leader. That's not so great, huh? All right, but my other habits are good. So here's what they are. As Ames said, I am a United States Army veteran. I was an intelligence agent in West Germany during the Cold War. I was the chairman of the Board of Visitors of the United States Air Force Academy, so I don't know if there are any Air Force people here or not. I am on the board of directors right now of the National Rifle Association. Any gunners here? I was the chairman of the National Commission on behalf of the Congress for the United States for 5 years of the National Commission on Terrorism and Weapons of Mass Destruction, and I think we did some good work on that. So, ladies and gentlemen, maybe last of all, I want everybody to know that against all odds, I ran for governor of Virginia on a platform of cutting taxes, got elected, and kept my promise, and we cut taxes in Virginia. Now, I'm here to talk to my friends here in Oregon and Washington State and the others who have come in for this wonderful picnic about what I think are the great challenges facing the country today. And you will address these issues as you go back home and you talk to your friends. Everybody that comes to this gathering of eagles, every eagle here is a leader. And so you're going to end up having to talk about these issues with your friends at home. There's no doubt about it. They're going to ask your opinion about these things, and I see these issues as twofold, so I'm going to give you my ideas. And then during Q&A, I'm sure you'll give me your ideas, because I've kind of got the flavor of this crowd, you see, and I figure that everybody here is kind of opinionated. That's a good thing. But I want to give you my ideas about what I think are the two principal issues facing the country today. So I'm going to start today with what we can do to save our country in this terrible crisis that we're facing internationally in the world today. And believe me, this is a very serious problem. Nothing like I've ever seen before. When I was raised in college thinking about the Cold War and the Soviet Union. I was in the Army intelligence when the Russians were real, the Berlin Wall was there. But I've never seen anything quite like this. What are we looking at? All at the same time. We have ISIS right now trying to take over the old Iraq and part of Syria and creating an Islamic caliphate. Doesn't care about any borders, putting in Islamic law, abusing women, murdering children, beheading people. A terrible crisis that's going on right now. And the jury is out about what kind of danger this is to the United States. We don't know yet. It's just at the very beginning. But you know what? Major challenges to this country always start small, and if you leave them alone, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the challenge that we're facing with ISIS right now. There's nothing wrong with thinking about that issue. And then Iran. Iran is determined to get a nuclear bomb. Now, there are a lot of tough choices here. I will tell you all that I, for one, don't want to see us go to war with Iran. I think it would be a really bad thing if we have to go to war with Iran. But what are your alternatives? If their determination is to get a bomb. We've already said we're not going to allow them to get a bomb, and I'm going to tell you, we can't allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Cannot allow it. Oh, it's very practical. It's very practical. At that point, they can threaten everybody around them. If they get a bomb, you know Egypt's going to have a bomb. Then Saudi Arabia is going to have a bomb. And the next thing you know, the most unstable area, not only in the world, but maybe in all time, is fully nuclearized. What are we going to do? If they insist, where are we going to draw the line? And do you think that if we draw a red line with Barack Obama as President of the United States, anybody would believe it? Which makes the world even more dangerous. How about the Gaza Strip and the war being conducted right now in Israel? I would have thought, by the way, 60 or 70 years on, that the issue of the existence of Israel would be off the table. The Gaza people and Hamas have put it back on the table, and that is very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. How about Russia? My old pals, the Russians. Now they take the position that they can just simply conquer any place that's adjacent to them where there are Russians. And they're getting away with it. They've taken and conquered the Crimea. Now they're trying to put pressure on the eastern Ukraine. What happens, ladies and gentlemen, if they decide they can succeed there because of American weakness and they move into the Baltic states? I suggest to you all, we may actually end up in a war with Russia if they threaten Latvia, Estonia, and the Baltic states. What about China? China's flexing their muscles in the South China Sea. For the first time, we have at least 6 or 7 major crises internationally on our hands at the same time. And I suggest to you all that the reason is because we have a weak president who sends weak messages to the people of the world. Our foreign policy has to be sophisticated. We simply cannot have a terrible situation in Iraq and in Afghanistan and then overreact and send messages that we're going to pull back and back and back. To do so encourages people who are bent on conquest and to the change that are dangerous to this world to go forward, and America cannot play that role. Now, I will tell you all that we are seeing the rise of some of this isolationism in the Republican Party, too. And I want to share with you all my view. My view is that isolationism in the Republican Party is dangerous. It is the same thing as Barack Obama. You end up in the exact same place when you begin to talk about pulling back and pulling back and pulling back. And I think that Rand Paul is subject to criticism for this. He is the one who is talking about drawing back and drawing back. The other day he gave a speech in which he said, well, maybe isolationism, ought not to be such a bad word under certain circumstances. Maybe we ought to be thinking about America first. Where are the lessons of history, ladies and gentlemen? In 1936, we had an America First type of program that led to something even worse in World War II. America is unique and exceptional in the world. We must provide leadership, and we must be very prepared to stand up and create stability and leadership in the world, and that's my view. Now, the president has now begun to do some airstrikes against ISIS. This has to be watched very closely. I can tell you that Rand Paul said decisively the other day, under no conditions would he support airstrikes on ISIS. Well, these are challenges that we have to face right now. And frankly, ladies and gentlemen, as leaders, as eagles, all of us together, we must think about what the future holds, and we must demand serious, strong, sophisticated foreign policy here in the United States. And I suggest to you there are several things that we have to think about. Number one, we ought to be willing to have a foreign policy that looks 5 steps ahead on the chessboard. We ought not to be simply doing one thing and saying that's all there is to it, whether it's pulling back or moving forward. I don't actually think we probably should have invaded Iraq because they didn't think through 5 steps ahead what could necessarily happen. But I will tell you that if we at the same time step back, we're not thinking 5 steps about what might happen. America has to have a real foreign policy where you think ahead about what the realities are of American power or lack of American power. I want to say to you that as a key principle of American foreign policy, America is exceptional. We are not just another country in the world. We are exceptional. I have lived in Germany. When I was there during the Cold War, I spoke their language. The Army taught me their language. I lived among them. I've traveled to 18 countries when I was governor. Since then, I've been to Israel. I've been to Pakistan. I want to assure you that we are exceptional, and the people of the world know we're exceptional. We're the most powerful people in the world, and we seek to conquer no one. We seek to stand up for the proper Western values that bring liberty, the advancement of women, individuality, and wealth to this world. And people know it. That's why they call and cry out for us all the time. A third principle is, I believe that this business that people tell us that says that the 21st century is not our day, that the Eastern world will conquer and control the 21st century, is baloney. The Americans will also be the 21st century leading power. And finally, I want to talk to you about the economy. The United States cannot have a credible national security or the safety of its people without a strong economy. And that's the second point that I want to make to you in this talk. I want to talk to you for a moment about the American economy. We've seen now the Great Recession. We're in the 7th year of the Great Recession. And what result? We now have just about the same number of people working now as we did in 2007, but the population is much larger. We don't have the same percentage of people working as we have had at the peak of the time of the American economy. Too many people are unemployed. Hispanics are unemployed higher than the national average. African Americans are unemployed higher than the national average. Women are unemployed higher than the national average. Young people, when they come out of college with a bachelor's degree today, 43% can't find suitable work. This is a very serious problem. I want to dwell on this for just a minute because it's the thing that has me the most worried. Every year, America renews itself when we graduate another class of people out of the BA colleges and the high schools of this country. The fact that we have a stagnant economy that doesn't offer proper and suitable job opportunities and careers for young people is a national crime, and it must change. A national crime, and it must change. Now, the idea that we maybe ought to be building up the national economy of the United States, it doesn't have to be just a Republican program, although it should be a Republican program. It doesn't have to be just Republican. The Democrats have a right to come in here and talk about what needs to be done to build up the economy of the United States, but they don't. Because they were weaned on FDR, because they were raised on LBJ and his war on poverty, and now they have come to maturity under Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Elizabeth Warren. God forbid that any of them become president of the United States. So let's think just a minute about what we're hearing out there on television when you tune in every night. Hear what's coming out of the national administration right now. Mostly what they're talking about is income equality, not opportunity for equality or the creation of wealth, the equality of result. They want everybody to make the same thing and to have the same income no matter what they do, what opportunity no matter what they do. That's what they want to have, income equality. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that is the most radical concept that has ever been introduced into American political thought in this country. Right now. No, that's not what we can do. What we have to have is an opportunity, a growth in this country so that people have a chance to rise. There's upward mobility. There's more chances for jobs and occupations and work, and a real chance for advancement through good education. That should be the Republican platform, and leave all this other stuff over to the Democrats. I want to talk to you about another thing about American values. There's the second issue. Maybe you all have heard about this. It's been a frantic debate. The president held a press conference on it last week talking about American companies that are moving overseas. Have you heard about that? They actually coined a word for it. It's called inversion. That's what they're talking about when they're on TV. Well, about this inversion. It's because American companies are going overseas because the United States of America has the second highest tax rate in the world. The Japanese are higher by just that much, and they have been stagnant for decades and decades in their economy, and so is the United States. So a company says we can't compete globally. If we're paying 35% in federal taxes and another 5% in local taxes, that's 40%, and a country is paying 15% out of Ireland or some other country, we can't compete globally, and so they're beginning to move overseas. Well, we know what the solution to that is. The solution is you cut the corporate income tax so that people will grow here in this country, invest in this country, hire Americans in this country, and build up this economy in the United States of America. And that's the right policy. But it's important, ladies and gentlemen, that we understand the message that's coming out of the White House right now. You can't ignore this. The president says that people who are being forced overseas by our policies, by the way we run our tax system, are unpatriotic, he says. Unpatriotic. He says that they're taking advantage of loopholes. This is the kind of talk that we're hearing out of the president right now. And the result of that is he's beginning to change the way Americans think about themselves. And that is what is so insidious. If people say to you, what's wrong with Barack Obama? The answer is he is changing the way Americans think about themselves to the point where we don't strive, we don't fight for advancement, we don't have upward mobility, we drive countries or corporations away from this country, we don't build up growth in this country, and that's what's wrong with Barack Obama, and it's a lousy look for the future, and I know we can do better. We can't put a Berlin Wall around the American economy, not in the modern world that we live in today. But what we can do is we can have a program of growth. We can reform our tax code that says that there's 10, 15, and 25% taxes, and everybody gets to pay their fair share of taxes. Everybody pays. We can buy the rate for corporations down to 15% if you do, in fact, remove all the special credits and deductions. You can buy the rate down to 15%. As a matter of fact, at that point, capital and money and corporations would not be going overseas. All the way worldwide, they'd be flowing into the United States to create chances for people to get jobs and real opportunities. We could do these things. You can say that companies can bring back money for no further taxation. You can say you can write off your investments right away. You can do these things, and the result would be explosive growth in the United States. Instead, we keep on doing the reverse. So those are my two messages to you, ladies and gentlemen. The danger that we face internationally and the opportunity we have to grow this country. But I'm going to say something as I close. When Roxane and I flew out here yesterday, I was reading a history book. I read history all the time, and I was reading a history of socialism. So I want to tell you a little story. You can look it up. There was a man by the name of Robert Owen in 1825. He came from England, and he established a special little enclave on a bunch of acreage, about as big as Ames' place here. And he called it New Harmony. And he believed he could remake men and women. He believed he could make men and women live together in perfect harmony on the following principles: atheism, no belief in God of any kind. Number two, no private property ownership of any kind. And number three, complete equality of income. Well, you know the way that worked. People didn't work because they were going to get their piece anyway. People were thronging the company store. People were working, handing out things, but they weren't creating anything or creating any kind of wealth whatsoever. And then after a while, it began to break down. There was a body of people who said, well, you know, what we really want to do is we want to form churches and we want to have our faith in God. and they had to split away and go someplace else. And then there were others who said, this is crazy. I want to own some property so that I can acquire more things and work harder to get more things so that I can be independent and not have anxiety and fear all the time. And after a while, this thing failed. It was in Indiana. You can look it up. It's on the Wabash River. And later on, Robert Owen wrote, and he said that his project failed in America, quote, because he found the population of the United States far too undeveloped at that period for the practice of a full and true socialism. In fact, Robert Owen was the one who coined the phrase socialism, and it failed. And the conclusion they reached was you couldn't put an enclave of socialism in America. You had to transform the entire society of America and make the entire society socialist. And then there would be nowhere to flee, nowhere to go, nowhere to save yourself, because the whole country would be socialist. And I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, is that not what's going on here today? America is exceptional. America is exceptional. We, all of us here at this place, and all the friends of ours just like us all across the country, we are the hope for the 21st century. We are Reagan's city on a hill because of our belief in God, because of the value of the individual, because of the ability to have and own property, which is the same thing as freedom, because of the belief in a free market that drives us to create greater and greater growth and wealth so that we all do better, and a belief in leadership in international affairs for the ultimate protection of our country. These things will not happen automatically anymore. We have to fight for them every day. Every day. And that's why you came, isn't it? Right. That's why you're here. That's why Ames does and Dama do this event. And that's why you drive up here. Because you want to exercise that leadership to save our country. And that's why I came all the way to Oregon to see you. Because we're proud of you. And together, we're going to win this fight, and American values will sustain and prevail in the 21st century, and the 21st century will again be an American century. Thank you all very much for a chance to be with you.
Governor Jim Gilmore.